diversity and equity program addressing racism. And the list goes on and on. You get my point. All of this is our money, folks. It's our tax money. I want that to sink in. Let's get to our first guest, the Executive Vice President, the National Taxpayers Union. Please welcome, first time to the show here, Brandon Arnold. Brandon, thanks for coming on the program. You heard me just rattle off a very, very short list of these earmarks, this ridiculous pork spending, these nonsensical, this is, some of these projects, I'm sitting there. By the way, I've tried to use Wi-Fi when the cities provide it. It never works. And do you or your wife or your significant other pay for your own yoga? And when your kids were in preschool, didn't you pay the bill? Like, give me a break with this stuff.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is well-intentioned, I suppose. But pickleball courts at a time when we have a $28 trillion debt, this spending has no business being up for consideration given the state of our finances right now. We need to be getting our fiscal house in order. We pushed out over $5 trillion to combat the COVID pandemic. And now it's time to tighten our belts and to prioritize spending in a way that addresses our nation's top priorities and doesn't go on these spending sprees like the Democrats are trying to do in Congress and this Biden administration is supporting with museums and free Wi-Fi and pickleball and restorative yoga and whatever this nonsense is. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I thought, if I recall, the left used to really stick it to the right for decades, back in the 80s and 90s, when I was being raised and I would hear my grandmother upset about it. They were the earmark kings and queens. And now, wow, how times have changed.
Yeah, the Democrats are leading the charge now, but you're right. The history is bipartisan in nature. Democrats aren't responsible. It was Republicans that advocated the Teapot Museum and the indoor rainforest in Iowa and the bridge to nowhere in Alaska. A lot of these were Republican priorities. And there are some Republicans, I have to say, that are asking for earmarks once again. The problem is once you ask for these earmarks and once they suck you in with these earmarks, even if it's for a respectable project, you have a bridge that needs repair in your district or something of that nature, you're sucked in to support that bill. So all of a sudden, you're not just voting for that project in your district or your state, you're also supporting that restorative yoga program in New Jersey and the pickleball courts and God knows where, and trillions of dollars of spending, of course, as well. It's the gateway drug to higher spending. We did away with earmarks under Republican leadership, and unfortunately, we're bringing them back. And there's bipartisan blame here. Republicans, some Republicans at least, are playing along, and they should absolutely not do so.
Let's talk about our economy. What will raising the capital, almost doubling the capital gains tax, taxing families making over $400K, raising the business tax for medium to large businesses, all these things he's going to do, tax. And then you see the jobs numbers today. I'm sure you saw them. How is this going to hurt? I shouldn't even tee it up with how's it going to affect. How is this going to hurt our economy and growth?
Yeah, it's going to be devastating. We're still in recovery mode. We had hoped for much more robust job numbers coming out today. There was speculation that it could be 1 million jobs. It could be even 2 million jobs. And of course, that was reasonable because the last jobs report said we created over 900,000 jobs. So roughly 270,000 jobs this time. Not great numbers. We're still recovering. Now is not the time for a major spending and tax program that like the Biden administration is pushing here. The National Association of Manufacturers say just the infrastructure portion of this plan will cost our economy 1 million jobs, 1 million jobs at a time when we're trying to recover, at a time when so many small businesses are hanging on by a thread. It's not only the taxes, it's the spending. The spending is going to suppress economic growth for decades to come. The Penn Wharton budget model said even as late as 2050, we're going to have a smaller economy because of this rampant spending. So it's irresponsible, not just in the here and now, it's irresponsible for your children, my children, our grandchildren to have to deal with a smaller economy, less productivity, and fewer jobs because we can't get our fiscal house in order here, and we can't take our foot off the accelerator when it comes to spending more money and raising more taxes.
Well, unfortunately, Republicans back in the day were the party of not spending, but we've seen both sides spend our money like it was growing on trees. I got to ask you about this because the job numbers came out today, 266,000 and change. The Labor Department, I guess, had estimated we're hoping for 998. Missed the mark on that one. And then I see places like Montana doing the no more, no work bonus. Like if you're not going to get to work because you don't feel like going, well then tough, no more sucking off the government, you know what. So my question to you would be, Brandon, what's happening? What are the reasonings? And I've got my own ideas about why this is happening, but why do you have certain sectors of the job market out there saying we can't even hire enough people fast enough, we can't find people for the jobs, and then you have job numbers coming out looking horrible like this. You have unemployment still sticking at I think 6.1 or 6.2% today. What do you think the factors are? Because I think there's two factors involved, but you're the expert. Why do you think that people aren't getting back to work, the job numbers are low, but then you have people saying we're trying to hire, we're offering, I mean, McDonald's in Florida are offering like $500 to go do a fast food job as a signing bonus.
Yeah, they're offering people $50 just to come in to interview for a job, not even necessarily take the position. They're offering all sorts of bonuses for low-wage workers right now because there is a real shortage, and it is focused in certain sectors of the economy, like restaurants. The hospitality sector is really struggling to bring in employees. I think there are a couple of reasons. One is the unemployment situation, the benefit situation that you mentioned. And Montana and another state, South Carolina, have both recently announced that they're going to no longer provide that additional unemployment insurance benefit of $300 a week on top of existing benefits, not $300 a week, that's $300 on top of existing benefits, because it's becoming so tough for our small businesses to hire people. If you run a restaurant or a bike shop or a barber shop or something right now, you have that help wanted sign out in front of your store. People aren't paying attention because they're receiving pretty plussed up benefits right now that are on par with or maybe even larger than what they get if they return to work. So there's no incentive to do so. And the other problem I think right now is childcare. We've opened schools partially. Some areas have opened them fully, but a lot of the country has only partially opened schools. For a lot of Americans, schools are a big chunk of their childcare. That's where they put their kids for hours upon hours every day. And while they're at school, they're able to go out and work. When schools are closed, they can't do so. And daycare providers as well have not fully reopened yet due to COVID. So the policymakers ought to be doing a couple of things here, rolling back those unemployment benefits, as is taking place in Montana and South Carolina, and reopening schools and daycare centers. If they did that, a lot of people would return to the workforce that are currently unable to do so or hesitant to do so.
Those are the two things that I'm actually thinking. Exactly the same. If you give people a bunch of money, and they've already been controlling Americans for 13 months, well, not this American, but I mean, put the mask on, stay inside, stay at home. You can't work, kids can't go to school. So you have some Americans out there brainwashed into thinking of that. And then you're right. If they're looking at, well, I can go back to this $11 or $12 hour job, or I can just sit home and keep taking the government paycheck and maybe do some stuff under the table, tax-free. Why go back to work, right? There's no incentive to go back to work. Not the way I was raised in my generation, probably not yours either. And then the school one is the other big one. You got single moms, single dads, whatever, with kids. And these states that are still doing the lockdowns, which is ridiculous because they're not following the science, those folks could go back and make an honest day's wages, but they've got to be home to take care of their kids. Just frustrating. Brandon Arnold, thank you so much for coming on, sharing some insight into what's going on. You kind of proved those talking points that I've been saying now, that these programs, this overspending, these increases in taxes are going to crush an already struggling economy. I'll give you the final thought. Can there be, or is there any, light at the end of the tunnel where good old America and capitalism and our grit and our hard-working attitude will get us out of this, even though we have a commander in whatever?
Well, I think we're on the right path to get out of this. What we need to do is get government to not try so hard to help us out here. Well, if government would just slam on the brakes, if we had gridlock in Congress and with a very closely divided House and Senate, I think there is a chance at least that they will be unable to get some of these more lavish programs and larger tax increases across the finish line into President Biden's desk. If that is indeed the case, I think our economy is going to be just fine. Once we get schools reopened, once we get businesses reopened, and once we get government programs that kind of turn off, like this unemployment benefit, we're going to be in fine shape. This country's going to be strong.
Yeah, when government gets out of the way, we, the people, do just fine. We just got to get Joe and the government out of the way. Brandon Arnold, Executive Vice President, National Taxpayers Union. Thanks for coming on, Brandon. Take care.
Thanks.
So, folks,